What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another video on this channel, and this time we're gonna go ahead and break down the what aspect of things? The Switch 2. This is gonna be called Coming Clean About the Switch 2. It's been about a month, and now spoiler alert, what should have been the killer app for Nintendo Switch 2 is upon us. And to be honest, I wasn't going to get it. I got a generous offer from my partner to go ahead and split the game accordingly. So, not paying full price to go ahead and try out a game that they also showed interest in playing. We are both currently having fun with it. The game, of course, being DK Bananza, which will be one of two games shown off in this footage. Basically, to detail where I'm currently at with Switch 2, because I have a little more thoughts since the last video. So here it goes. Part of this is sharing the simple fact that I have a unique privilege when it comes to the Switch 2. And I'm not going to get into a ton of detail depending on who's listening out there, but let's just say, long story short, due to a retailer error, I will not say which, I basically have a free Switch 2. So, yeah. Everything I'm experiencing, even though I had already made the decision to use the money for the Switch 2, and probably still mostly would not have regretted for the reasons I've mentioned in previous videos, I basically have the unique opportunity to try out the Switch 2 and everything that I have for it at no cost. So, with that out of the way, right, I still want to be as fair and objective as possible when talking about the Switch 2, which I have been to this point, I feel. Good and bad. With still the firm stance of, like, hey, this is the decision I made, but this doesn't mean I can't be critical of the thing I am still enjoying. So, and really, if anything, that case has gotten better now because of DK Bananza. I do think DK Bananza, while I paid half of the price for it, is actually worth its asking price. Unlike Mario Kart World, that is somehow $10 more for whatever reason. Hence, FOMO, get it with the bundle, whatever. But $80 Mario Kart World, $70 DK Bananza. DK Bananza is $10 less, and there is a lot more to do. And there will be a lot more to enjoy. Like, just from a simple mere value perspective, you are going to get that much more out of DK Bananza than you will from Mario Kart. And that's even with its free roam. So take that for what you will. But the Switch 2 is giving off very early vibes with for the good things that it has, which I've gone into in the previous videos, which, you may want to go ahead and check those things out, go back a few videos. I know what to do with the Switch 2 at this point. And I have mostly good things to say while acknowledging a bunch of the bad, mostly around the pricing of the game and Nintendo's lack of transparency to this point. VRR not working at launch. I think it's VR. One of the fancier technologies is supposed to work at launch. So, but the Switch 2, very early on, is giving vibes of being exactly part 2 of the Switch 1, just with better tech that evidently we're not using to the full extent, but that's a whole other aspect of things. So, the Switch 2 has performance issues already. Some could say this is because we're still learning how to use the tech, which I'm sure to some extent is true. Hopefully we get better with it over time. But so far, it seems very much like Switch 1 Part 2. I wish it was more Switch 2 better tech, which is technically true, and therefore we have moved on to better things. But no, it is literally Switch 1 Part 2, because DK Bananza does have, and you're probably not going to notice this stuff, mostly having fun, but evidently according to Digital Foundry, it does have performance issues, and at a point that is especially egregious at a particular boss fight. I have not been to whatever boss fight this is the case on, and personally I've only really experienced the most frame dipping taking place during, interesting enough, the literal animation for gobbling a banana when you get it. But I think if you turn like some of the motion settings off, that lag actually goes away. It's very slight, and you know, it's not a place that is going to really affect your gameplay overall. Obviously, since you're just gobbling the banana and that's it. But like I noticed a tad bit of slowdown there. Maybe a couple other occasions, very slight if I wanted to like nitpick, but the most obvious signs of it are the ones that I mentioned. But as performance issues, and I got a game that is not designed for Switch 2, but you think in theory would run better on the Switch 2. There's issues specific to that. It's Chronicles of the Wolf. It's actually the footage I used for the last video, and it was randomly, I think I didn't mention this, it was randomly flashing. It's specifically a Switch 2 problem that does not exist in Switch 1. Hopefully they patched that at this point. I don't know. It's just the game, so I haven't gone back to it to do that, or test it out, or see if there's a patch or whatever. And most recently, Shadow Labyrinth, the Switch 2 edition, looks better, but evidently runs worse than it does on the Switch 1. Are we seeing a pattern here? Like, have we seen this before? I think we saw this for about, 8 years time previously with the Switch 1, roughly. We've seen this already. And it looks like we're doing it all over again. And you can't claim just Nintendo, because like we're talking first party and a couple third party games. So here we stand, right? It kind of is what it is. It's seeming like to some extent we are going to get more of the same. I'm kind of expecting this as well with Pokemon ZA. Now with ZA, we do have the benefit of already knowing that, of course, it's coming out on the Switch 1 as well as the Switch 2. So Switch 1, I'm kind of expecting some of the same issues that we ran into potentially with Scarlet Violet. Hopefully not as bad for the ones who have not been able to upgrade. As I do believe it is a Switch 1 game that is now going to have a Switch 2 upgrade, making ZA perform similar to current Scarlet Violet, which should have little to no issues. But we'll have to wait and see on that. All of this aside, because I mean, there's definite issues, we really can't get around that, but for what DK Bananza specifically currently offers, all they're able to pull off, and look, you know, I saw the Digital Foundry thing like a lot of other people. I'm not the frame rate guy or even the older tech guy. It's kind of what you would expect with Nintendo anyway. Like, for all that stuff aside, when you put aside all the technical aspects of things, which again, you have to do this with Nintendo anyway, that's been the case. Let's not pretend like it's otherwise, right? Strictly game perspective, DK Bananza is fucking fun. Just period, end of story. It is a fun game that pulls off all that it does, and remains fun while you do so. and it also runs quite well, all considered. With all the destructibility you can do in the game, the dips definitely do not get in the way of the experience. The dips do make me worry about a potential Switch 2 future, with going along the same lines of that whole, literally just being a continuation of Switch 1 where we're going to run into problems. But to say this is on the same level as, say, like Switch 1 Scarlet Violet, or another good one I can think of is the Zelda Link's Awakening remake and Echoes of Wisdom. To say it's comparable to either of those two things on Switch 1, that's just simply not the case. The most egregious frame dropping is evidently through a certain boss fight where you basically cut the frame rate in half because they tried to do a boss fight but also constantly load terrain, and I'm guessing the system did not like that. I'm kind of keeping it at that because I've only seen the footage from the video. I don't really know anything about the boss fight, nor do I want to spoil it, nor do I think I even am quite there on my particular playthrough. But also, the only other time is that I've noticed, and interesting that it's in the video as well, it's very random. It's when you first pick up a banana, like right before the text is on screen, you get the animation of, DK eating the banana or whatever. It's like just before then, you could tell the screen, you could tell the frame rate dips ever so slightly just before that for whatever reason. If these are the only problems, like considering all the shit you can break and the frame rate is pretty solid throughout, and I've been across several worlds at this point, or layers as they're called in this, it's pretty damn fun. The banter between, well, DK doesn't talk, but Pauline's banter, it is what it is. It's fine. Sometimes it's borderline annoying, but it's fine. It's humorous at least. She's a little on the ridiculous side, but that kind of works because DK's kind of ridiculous himself. So when you think about it like that, it actually works quite well. You do get rewarded for exploring in the stuff that you do. I wasn't really expecting skill points in this kind of game, but here we are. You can play Fashion Kong. Some stuff literally is just fashion. Other stuff will actually affect certain things you can do. So there is a benefit to hunting around and finding treasure chests that can give you like more bananas to go towards that, or getting fossils to go towards these things as well in shops. There's just always something to do, and there's a lot to look at as well. It's a very fun game. It controls very well. It's introducing new forms, provided I've only seen 2 of what I think there's 5 total of thus far. But everything that's been on display, everything I've checked out, outside of my own personal experience, just the whole picture, while I won't sit here and say 10 out of 10, is probably a 9 out of 10. It's right up there with Claire Obscure for the year, where this is a must-play title. And is definitely in the conversation for better things to consider for the year. And I've gone back to Mario Kart World a couple times, but only so many times, mostly in group settings, but this was expected. I expected to play the hell out of Mario Kart World over the first couple days, get all the things, and provided I haven't done the mirror courses, but it's the same shit backwards, and just kind of shelve it outside of company. But this is the bundle that came with the system, and I did the bundle like a lot of people to not pay $80 and only pay $50, which I think is more appropriately priced for what Mario Kart has to offer. And as mentioned earlier, regardless of going half and half, I think DK Bananza is absolutely worth its asking price. And This should have been the bundle. Why they held off, maybe there was some strategy behind it. I'm sure there is. You know, I don't quite have the Nintendo business mind, and I'm not sure they even know what they're doing at times. But, you know, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a little too early to say whether Switch 2 in the grand scheme of things is going to be a hit or a miss. I do think DK Bananza helped tilt the scales in the favor of things being good for Nintendo as opposed to bad. And that's even with all the nonsense discourse out there, right? I say nonsense, I don't want to, like, you know, diminish anybody's feelings about it. Hell, I've shared a lot of them on my own. But it was important also to share this, not just with these updated opinions of, like, having the experience with DK Bananza and a Switch 2 version that somehow runs worse than the Switch 1 version. It was important to provide full context because I am in a bit of a unique position to talk about these things because of what I explained in the beginning of the video. I have not let this skew my opinion overall. I do think, you know, while DK Bananza is a great selling point, it probably still is a hard sell for your average consumer. Unless, of course, you're legitimately, I mean, look, games sell consoles. And I know we've gotten away from that type of mentality. I'm old school, so I always feel like you go to the consoles for the specific games. You know? Call me crazy, right? Like that's the Nintendo thing, and you can always expect that here. If you're one of those people, this will probably tilt the scales towards, all right, maybe I need this thing now. And the good thing is, because it's not doing as well as perhaps maybe some people have thought, finding a Switch 2 will probably not be so hard to go towards that goal if you want that for yourself. However, for your average consumer that may not necessarily be into a spin-off Mario game, even though its cart does well, whatever, that might not be into a Mario spin-off game or Donkey Kong specifically, or even just a 3D Donkey Kong, although I will say this is better than 64. You can probably still wait, you know? You can probably still wait. Wait for at least like one or two, maybe like ish first party titles to be out. I say first party titles because if you don't like game key cards, and I get it, you'll have probably guaranteed physical copies that you can get. So like a couple more of those to round out, you know, plus everything else that's out and will come out alongside that. There'll just be more to choose from. You know, maybe holiday. If you really can't wait until the following year, holiday would probably be a great time to snatch up a Switch 2. I think that pretty much updates my opinions on everything. Again, I don't have, I feel, as many regrets as some might. And really, like, I have to do a double take in this whole not technically having to spend on a Switch 2, right? Because in my mind, like, I had already put aside for it anyway. So when I'm stating these things, purchase or not, I'm coming from a place where I don't want my opinion to be affected one way or the other. I can be objective about something that I may like, right? We're just gonna have to see what happens from here, because I think it's all out there at this point. While I'm more excited than I was initially, because I went into Switch launch, even having pre-ordered the thing, with being cautiously optimistic, That's still the thought in the back of my mind, just because of how things could potentially perform over time. Hence possibly affecting the value perspective, or just frankly what they even have in the store, performance or not. Like, is this another Wii U situation, or do we have like a solid plan this time around for whatever the Switch 2 library is going to look like? Only Nintendo knows the answers, and the rest of us will just have to wait and see. No one has a crystal ball, but as of right now, I would say, discourse aside, I'm leaning more towards not regretting the purchase while still seeing, plenty of reasons why someone might not want to, and or I might actually encourage somebody not to. But I just don't regret it personally. Before this gets much more repetitive, we're going to cut things off here. Take care, everybody. I will see you guys in whatever the next video is. Later.